There we go. Alright. History lessons with the mumi. Okay, alright. Russo-Japanese War, 1904 till 1905. Military conflict in which a victorious Japan forced Russia to abandon its expansionist policy in East Asia, thereby becoming the first Asian power in modern times to defeat a European power. Origins of the Russo-Japanese War. By the early 17th century, Russia had established its authority over all of Siberia, but its attempts to move southward were consistently blocked by China. Fully engaged in Western Europe and against Turkey during the 18th century, Russia could not press its interests in East Asia as the settlement of Siberia developed. However, it realized its need for outlets to the sea, and because China continued to deny it access to the Amur region, it resorted to force towards the end of the reign of Emperor Nicholas I, 1825 till 1855. I doubt he lived over 100 years, so yeah, 25 years. I will be deranged assisting adjunct Professor Chiming in from the sidelines. Yes, thank you very much. Please correct me if I have anything wrong. In the 1850s, Russian towns and settlements appeared along the left bank of the Amur. Halong River, the Chinese government made repeated protests, but because of its ongoing struggle against Great Britain and France and the internal turmoil of Taiping Rebellion, was unable to resist Russian pressure. Finally, by the Treaty of Aigun, 1858, confirmed by the Beijing Convention, 1860, China ceded to Russia all the territory north of Amur, together with the maritime region east of the Wushuli River, from the mouth of the Amur to the boundary of Korea. This included the splendid site where Vladivostok was soon to be founded. Russia's expansionist policy was now alarming other European powers. However, in 1861, Great Britain thwarted a Russian attempt to establish a naval base on the island of Tsushima, lying in between Korea and Japan. For the next 30 years, Russia was content to consolidate its gains. Well, the last one did not work, but something more on what we are talking about. Oh my gosh. Please, no, stop! Salty, stop that shit! Stop, don't have that in my fucking chat. I swear to God, hold on. Salty, please stop glowing. Please stop glowing. You get timeout. You get timed out from Twitch. You get timed out from YouTube. Salty, please don't do that shit. We had this. We had this once. We had this conversation. Salty. Salty, please. During this time, the great powers were turning nations into puppet states to gain influence and establish itself as a major power. Ah, I see. Let's go back here. Oh, hold on. Just there we go. The reign of Emperor Alexander III, 1881 to 1894, witnessed a revival of interest in the development of Asian parts of the Russian Empire. In 1891, Alexander sent his son, soon to reign as Nicholas II, on a much publicized tour of East Asia, and at this time work began on the Trans-Siberian Railway after the accession of Nicholas II. Ascension. Isn't this supposed to be ascension? Because he ascended the throne? Anyway, after the ascension of Nicholas II in 1894, Russian expansionist policy became more active and pronounced. However, the outbreak of the First Sino-Japanese War in that year demonstrated that Japan was an ascendant new power in Asia. Ooh. The emergence of Japan. The transformation of Japan from an isolationist feudal state into a vigorous modern power had begun in 1868. With the demise of the Tokugawa shogunate and the restoration of the Meiji Emperor, the reforms of that era had been carried through with such dramatic speed that within a quarter of a century, Japan was ready to assert itself against China. Although the rulers of Qing dynasty controlled a vast empire, China centered the later half of the 19th century fighting a losing battle against European encroachment and weakened by internal corruption. Oh, this I believe would all have also been happening during the United States-owned Civil War, Russia using its influence to pressure France and Britain into staying out of that crapshoot. Damn. Okay. In its foreign policy, Japan aimed first at extending its authority into Korea, a state which China had long claimed serenity. Its struggle with China for predominance in Korea gave rise to several crises, and finally, in 1894, to war. Japan, with its modernized army and navy, at once won a series of striking victories against the Chinese, who in the Treaty of Shimonoseki, April 17th, 1895, ceded to Japan the Kwantung Liaodong Peninsula, on which Port Arthur, now Dalian, stands together with Formosa, Taiwan, and the Pesadores, Penghu Islands, and agreed to pay a heavy indemnity. So they're basically taxes. the way I am understanding this. Tribute is a more apt word, I believe. This display of Japanese power and its decisive victory over China threatened to close the door on Russia in East Asia, and it made conflict between Russia and Japan inevitable. The Russian government was quick to react to the Treaty of Shimonoseki on the initiative of Nicholas II. Russia, Germany, and France conducted the so-called Triple Intervention, compelling Japan to give up its territorial gains in return for an increased indemnity. So, more tribute, basically. Nicholas, guided by Sergei Yulevich, Count Witt, his Minister of Communications and Finance, at once obtained a loan for China, enabling it to pay the large indemnity to Japan. In 1896, Russia concluded an alliance with China against Japan, guaranteeing the integrity of Chinese territory under the terms of this alliance. Russia also obtained the right to lay the eastern section of the Trans-Siberian Railway across Manchuria by way of Harbin to Vladivostok, to extend a branch line from Harbin to Mukden, now Shenyang and Dalian, and to administer and patrol with Russian troops a strip of territory on either side of the railway. European colonialism in China. Hold on. Yeah, Japan's rapid industrialization and modernization kind of made it the exception, as usually heavily unindustrialized and military modernized for a time kind of got turned into mass exporters of raw materials to the developed nations. Yup. They focused on themselves. From being a shut-in, they went to being an extrovert, basically, with the change of power as soon as the reigning shogun died, I believe. I know a little bit about the history, but not too much. It was the change of power. Why, yes, I am a history nerd. How could you tell? No, it's fine. I like history nerds. It's fun to listen to them most of the time. Like talking to them about the weapons of those times. Though I don't know much about the Japanese history in weapon manufacturing. That was more the Dark Age stuff, right? Like, European style swords and stuff. But yeah. An era of European rivalry had now begun in East Asia. German Emperor William II, during a visit to Russia in 1897, secured the support of his cousin Nicholas II for the German annexation of Kiachao, now Qingdao. Subsequently, Nicholas II himself decided to seize Port Arthur, in spite of his own guarantees of the integrity of Chinese territory and over the strong objections of his minister Witt. Witt nevertheless managed to win Chinese agreement to a lease of Port Arthur for 25 years. April 8, 1898, Russia thus entered into the occupation of the Kwantung Peninsula, from which only 3 years earlier it had excluded Japan. Oh. So just 3 years earlier they excluded Japan, and now Russia is like coming in. Okay. The seizure of Chinese territory by German and Russia was followed by British demands for Weihai and French claims on Guangzhou, now Guangzhou. Excuse me. The response to the steady erosion of Chinese sovereignty was the Boxer Rebellion. 1899 to 1900, an official sanctioned peasant uprising against foreigners. Japan and the European powers intervened to suppress the revolt, and Russia used the rebellion as an excuse to pour troops into Manchuria. From there, it planned to invade Korea, the independence of which had been guaranteed by Japan since the Treaty of Shimonoseki. As Japan prepared to assert its power in East Asia, it built a modern and efficient army and navy. As a result of its recruiting law of 1896, by January 1904, its frontline army numbered 270,000 highly trained troops, although its reserve amounted only to some 200,000 men. Japan had gained a distinct advantage over Russia in East Asia, including all patrols on the Manchurian railways and the small garrison at Port Arthur and Vladivostok. Russia had only some 80,000 troops in the region. At the other end of the Trans-Siberian Railway, however, it had almost overwhelming manpower available, as the peacetime strength of the Russian army was approximately 1 million men. The Japanese, of course, entertained no thought of attacking Russia itself, but were concerned wholly with winning an early and decisive victory that would securely establish their hegemony in East Asia. In this strategy, they were counting on the Trans-Siberian Railway to provide inadequate to the task of bringing up timely Russian reinforcements, and their miscalculation on this score might have involved them in disaster. I believe there was one Admiral Makarov was sent because of the unfortunate and abrupt death of another independent admiral. Competent admirals are rare in the Russian Navy, a trait that hasn't changed even today. We'll see him and his cursed voyage soon. God damn. Russian policy in East Asia. Salty go brr. Welcome back, Salty. This time, please don't do some weird shit like that. The Russian government was confused and unrealistic in its policy leading up to the war with Japan, and indeed, in the conduct of the war itself. This fact, combined with the ineffective leadership of its troops, was more than any other factor responsible for its defeat. Is this supposed to be generation? No, I don't know. Alexei Kuropatkin, Nicholas II's Minister of War, had watched with anxiety the growth of Japanese armed strength, realizing that Japan had gained preponderance in East Asia. In the summer of 1903, he recommended that Russia should abandon its projects in Manchuria and restore Port Arthur to China in return for concessions in the Vladivostok region. His proposals were accepted, but extremists at the imperial court and the powerful commercial interest behind the Russian expansionist movement in East Asia nullified Kuropatkin's policy. Meanwhile, nothing was done to strengthen Russian forces, and the Russian government simply ignored Japan's preparations and obvious intentions. What dumbasses, General. That probably is supposed to be shorthand for general. Ah, okay. General Alexei Kuropatkin. Okay. All right. Got it. Thank you very much. So bro was like, hey yo, look what they're doing. He's basically fucking Kirsche. She's like, look what they're doing. It's so obvious. And then it happens and everyone's like, why? How could this happen? Bro is the exact same. Bro is like, look at Japan, they're prepared for war against us. We should do something. And the fucking greedy merchants in Russia were like, nah, bro, we need more money. God fucking damn it. The outbreak of war on the night of February 8th or 9th, 1904, without a declaration of war, the main Japanese fleet, under the command of Admiral Togo Haihachiro, took the Russian squadron at Port Arthur by surprise, inflicting serious losses and imposing a blockade on the harbor. Admiral Yevgeny Alexeyev was viceroy and first commander-in-chief of the Russian forces in East Asia. Alexeyev, though a favorite of the emperor, possessed questionable judgment, and he gave the demoralizing order that the navy was not to risk proceeding to sea. When Admiral Stepan Osipovich Makarov, a brave and able officer, assumed command of the navy, he took his ships to sea daily and seriously harassed the Japanese fleet. Unfortunately for the Russian military effort, Makarov was killed on April 13th, barely 2 months into the war, when his flagship Petropavlovsk struck a mine and sank. The Russian squadron was thereafter kept in harbor for months, while the Japanese fleet lay off Port Arthur unchallenged. Thus, the Japanese fleet, although about equal in strength to the Russian Far Eastern Fleet, kept the enemy fleet divided and confined in Port Arthur and Vladivostok. It's worse. I think multiple hold on. Why kill when you can kill? Competent officers being drowned out in a sea of Roby Starbucks. Yeah, true. See? Cursed. Indeed. Aw, man! Bro was doing something, right? The other guy, questionable decision to not go out onto the sea as a, admiral of the navy. Can we just call him Pussy Boy? Man. Bro. Did he go on some I go down with my ship kind of shit? Did he go out on like I'm dying with my ship kind of way? Because that's like admirable. Man. Hold on. My feet are itchy as fuck. I gotta stop. Just stop scratching him. It'll be okay. Without waiting to gain command of the sea, the Japanese had begun in March transporting their first army under the command of General Tamemoto Kuroki across the sea to Korea, landing it at Incheon, not far from Seoul, and at Nampo in the north. The spring thaw had made the roads virtually impassable, and it took many days before the Japanese army was in position before the town of Yuju, now Shinyuju, on the Yalu River. On May 1st, the Japanese attacked and after bitter fighting defeated the Russians. Japanese losses were about 1,100 men out of a force of 40,000, while Russian losses were 2,500 out of a force of 7,000 troops engaged in this action. It was a victory of tremendous significance, for although the outnumbered Russians made an orderly withdrawal, it was Japan's first victorious engagement against a Western country. God damn! Maybe you should change your foot bandages. Probably, man. They're fucking disgusting by now. These numbers are impressive, by the way. 40,000. Lost 1,100 men in a fight against 7,000, while the other ones lost more than double, but had not even 25% of their numbers. So, just percentage based, the Russians put up a big fight against the Japanese just based on numbers. It feels like if they were like just a little bit more evened out, like 20,000, 40,000, the Russians would maybe even have won. But they were clearly outnumbered. Clearly. God damn. Russian strategy. A public outcry against Alexeyev as commander-in-chief compelled Nicholas to send Kuropatkin to take over the command, although Alexeyev remained as viceroy. Kuropatkin had proved a competent minister of war, but was to show himself sadly irresolute and passive as a commander in the field. His policy was to avoid action whenever possible until he had significant superiority in numbers. He replaced his forces so that they could delay the enemy and then retired to positions prepared in the rear. During May, the Japanese... Or just a little bit better logistics. Maybe. Logistics is a big part of war, right? If you don't have logistics, you're fucked, right? Your soldiers, based on like rations and shit, will be demoralized, hungry, and stuff like that. And that alone, like weakens your whole battalion or army, in some cases, or in many actually. So in war, everything at the same time is extremely important. Whether it be strategy or something like that. Google how many arsons happen daily. Holy shit, brother. This is your first time in here. What the fuck? But, no. Why? What the fuck? We're looking at Russian history right now. Please don't bring up arson. Fun. Alright, bro. Alright. During May, the Japanese Second Army under General Yasukata Oku landed on the Kwantung Peninsula on May 26. This force, outnumbering the Russians 10-1, won the Battle of Nanshan, cutting off the Port Arthur garrison from Russia's main forces in Manchuria. Two more Japanese divisions landed on the eastern Korean coast to form the Third Army under General Nogi Marisuke, which was to operate against Port Arthur. A further division to form the nucleus of the Fourth Army under General Michitsura Nodzu was landed on the Manchurian coast. God damn. Holy shit, that's a multi-layered attack. God damn. They made sure to outnumber them every time so far. I mean, Kuropatkin was doing the right thing. His forces were not prepared to fight against a extremely motivated and aggressive enemy with multiple centuries of experience fighting endless war in the Sengoku Jidai. Yeah, the Japanese back in the day were fucking fighting! I know that much. Those those fuckers would fight for days. Kuropatkin was disturbed by this enemy concentration. He ordered preparations to make Mukden a stronghold to which he could retreat, but at this time he received an order signed by the emperor himself, impressing on him that the fate of Port Arthur was his direct responsibility. Kuropatkin therefore disposed his main force south of Mukden around Liaoyang, but at Fujian, now Wafangdian, on June 14th, the Japanese, with 35,000 men, decisively defeated a 25,000 strong Russian army. What are the numbers in lives lost? Actually, that's what I'm interested in right now. Yes. The Japanese then advanced in 3 columns on Liaoyang, where the main Russian force under Kuropatkin had retired and taken up strong positions. Even an unexpected sortie of Russian naval squadron at Port Arthur, which for a time paralyzed the Japanese land offensive, and then the sudden appearance of the Russian Vladivostok squadron in the Straits of Tsushima, which added to the anxieties of the Japanese high command, did not embolden the Russian command to adopt more aggressive tactics. Well, you have a stronghold. Defend it unless the enemy has a opening, but even then that could be a trap. So I think he didn't really do anything wrong. Towards the end of July, Kuropatkin engaged in Kuroki's first army, after which Kuropatkin fell back on Liaoyang and there remained on a defensive, although he had considerable opportunities to attack the advancing enemy columns. On August 25th, the Battle of Liaoyang was joined, and after 9 days of stubborn fighting, the Japanese won a significant victory in spite of inferior numbers, 130,000 against 180,000 Russians. Nevertheless, their loss of some 23,000 men faced them with serious difficulties, for they had limited trained reserves. The Russians, meanwhile, had withdrawn in good order towards Mukden, where they were now receiving reinforcements via the Trans-Siberian Railway at the rate of 30,000 men per month. Damn! Okay, goddamn! Even if they suffered heavy losses here, they get replenished. This is a meat-grinding war, isn't it? Goddamn. I mean, not as much as others, but this is still... Damn, okay. Realizing that the Japanese were nearing the end of their resources while Russian army was gaining in strength, Kuropatkin resolved now to take the offensive. Despite this new, more assertive strategy, Kuropatkin made careful preparations to hold Mukden, which, as the capital of Manchuria, had special political importance. The first battle resulting from Kuropatkin's offensive was fought on the Shaho River October 5th to 17th, 1904. And as a subsequent battle took place at Sendepu, January 26th to 27th, 1905, both might have been decisive victories for Russia had Kuropatkin and his senior officers been more resolute and aggressive. But in the event, both battles proved indecisive. So it was a victory and not a actual... Okay. So they just fended them off, but gave opportunity to Japan for relaunching their attacks. Or they could have been just crushed. True. I think the defensive stance is not bad, right? It's most of the time, if you have larger numbers, it should be easier to protect a place, to defend a place, than it is to attack it, right? Most of the time. Of course, not always. The capture of Port Arthur. Meanwhile, at Port Arthur, the Japanese found the Russian garrison much stronger than they had expected. The Russian defenders had done much to fortify their position with breastworks and barbed wire, and they possessed several machine guns. Ooh. At that time? Machine guns in this time and age? God damn, that must have been oof. After making several very costly attempts to take the fortress. Hello, a sudden story time, and okay. After making several very costly attempts to take the fortress, the Japanese abandoned general assault and resorted to siege tactics. The dragging on of those operations distressed the Japanese command, for it not only tied down their Third Army, which they needed urgently in the main theater of war, but it also lowered the morale of their troops in Manchuria. The news of the sailing of the Russian Baltic fleet for East Asia made the Japanese redouble their efforts to take Port Arthur. Russian machine guns took a vicious toll on the Japanese attackers, who suffered very heavy casualties as a result of storming tactics to which they had once again resorted. Observers from the armies of Western Europe and the United States were embedded with both the Japanese and the Russians, and the effect of machine gun fire on massed infantry. Hold on. What age? This is 1904 and 1905. Yes, you were muted, Snapper. See, that's the bitch with hindsight. Larger numbers seem like a bonus, but if most of your troops are ill-trained and mostly conscripts, likely those troops would just get butchered. Yes, that's why I said in a defensive stance, right? Protecting something. You have to teach people less in protecting something than assaulting something. In my mind, at least. Maxim, probably. Yeah, that was Maxim machine gun. Hell yeah. Where was I? There. Assaults was gruesomely apparent to all. However, the lessons of Port Arthur would go largely unheeded by European commanders who would replicate the same sanguinary tactics on the Western Front during World War I. Of course, we repeat mistakes because it's not our lives, right, commanders? But that was the majority of the Russian army, peasant farmers given a club that shoots bullets. Yeah. That's why the, what is his name again? Kuropatik. He actually made quite the good decisions for what he had. But he had like background pressure from the emperor and what I believe nobles, or just the politicians under the emperor. I think he got like massively stressed by them wanting to secure some type of positive news for them, right? That kind of thing, probably. Among the Russian commanders at Port Arthur, there was serious disagreement. Some urged surrender, while others insisted that the garrison must resist to the end. On January 2nd, 1905, Lieutenant General Anatoly Stessel, the commander of the fortress, sent out the white flag without conferring with his officers and thus surrendered Port Arthur. The surrender was regarded as an act of either incompetence or treachery, for the fortress contained provisions for over 3 months and adequate supplies of ammunition. Kuropatkin needed to basically train up those conscripts into vague sense of competency. Yeah. And the decision to go defensive instead of offensive was probably wise. It was probably wise because he really just had like farmers the way you were telling it to me. I'm going off of your words, by the way, right now. So I have no idea myself, but if it really was like just farmers and shit, it was a wise choice to go on the defensive. The Battle of Mukden. The final and greatest land battle of the war was fought for Mukden, February 19th to March 10th, 1905. Again, Kuropatkin decided to attack, but this time the Japanese forestalled him. 3 Russian armies faced the Japanese from right to left. The second, under General Alexander von Kaulbars, the third, under General Alexander Bilderling, and the first, under General Nikolai Linevich, comprising of 330,000 men and 1,475 guns in all. This force held firm against 3 Japanese armies under the command of Marshal Iwo Oyama, who had 270,000 men and 1,062 guns. After long and stubborn fighting and heavy casualties, Kuropatkin decided to draw of his troops to the north, a movement he carried out successfully, but it left Mukden to fall into the hands of the Japanese. Losses in this battle were exceptionally heavy, approximately 89,000 Russians and 71,000 Japanese having fallen. Japan was now exhausted and could not hope to pursue the land war to a successful conclusion. Its salvation would come with a stunning naval victory at Tsushima, along with increasing internal unrest throughout Russia. Holy shit. Not to be confused with Kuropatkin. Pipkin Pippa's dad. Yeah. Holy shit, these numbers! They just keep going up! 89,000 Russians and 71,000 Japanese dead, combined of a total number of 160,000 deaths. Wow. War has no victories. It doesn't. War does not have victories. It only has death. And widows. The Maxim machine gun was invented in 1884. For context, the Mosin Nagant was invented in 1891. Ah. And that is Maxim machine gun. Ah, this thing. I see. Maxim machine gun. Yeah. I see. This thing's quite amazing for its time. It could probably hold up even today, honestly. So the first fully automated and water-cooled machine gun is older than the Russian trash rod. It is. Yep. Anyway, let's continue. The Battle of Tsushima. The Japanese had been unable to secure the complete command of the sea on which their campaign depended. The Russian squadrons at Port Arthur and Vladivostok had made sorties, and both sides had suffered losses in engagement. Meanwhile, in St. Petersburg, it was decided to send the Baltic fleet to East Asia under the command of Admiral Zhinovy Petrovich Rozhevensky, for it was assumed that once the Russians had gained command of the sea, the Japanese campaign would collapse. The Baltic fleet spent the entire summer of 1904 preparing to sail, and it set out from Libava, now Lipaja, Latvia, on October 15th, 1904. On October 21, off the Dogger Bank, several Russian ships opened fire on British civilian travelers in the mistake believed that they were Japanese torpedo boats. This incident inflamed the British to such a degree that war between Britain and Russia was avoided only by an immediate apology and promise to full compensate made by the Russian government. God damn! I saw the video of Maxim was used in Russia-Ukraine wars. Ah. Oh, poor Rozhevsky. This motherfucker had to deal with so much bullshit. Give him a look after the Battle of Tsushima. Alright. At Nosy Be, near Madagascar, Rozhevsky learned of the surrender of Port Arthur and proposed returning to Russia. However, naval reinforcements were already en route from the Baltic via Suez in early March 1905, and he decided to proceed. Rozhevsky linked up with these reinforcements at Cam Ranh Bay, now in Vietnam, and his full fleet appeared to be formidable. Armada. In reality, however, many of the ships were old and unserviceable. Early in May, the fleet reached the China Sea, and Rozhevsky made the Vladivostok via the Tsushima Strait. Toko lay in wait for him off the southern Korean coast near Busan. And on May 27th, as the Russian fleet approached, he attacked. The Japanese ships were superior in speed and armament, and in the course of the two-day battle, 2/3 of the Russian fleet was sunk. 6 ships were captured, 4 reached Vladivostok, and 6 took refuge in neutral ports. It was a dramatic and decisive defeat. After voyaging 7 months to within a few hundred miles of its destination, the Baltic fleet was shattered. With it, Russia's hope of regaining mastery of the sea was crushed. Damn. So he tried to do the right thing and, like, go back, but he couldn't. So he decided to go forth and got fucked. Wow. Goddamn. Yes. bro really looked at his ships. What's up, mommy? God damn it, Pedro. Pedro, long time no see. Ah. Yes, son. Give the poor guy a look up. Yeah, right after. Fuck. For Russia, the disastrous course of the war had seriously aggravated unrest inside the country, and the surrender of Port Arthur, followed by the loss of Mukden and the devastating defeat at Tsushima, made the emperor accept the proffered mediation of US President Theodore Roosevelt. It was, however, the Japanese government that had taken the initiative in proposing peace negotiations. Exhausted financially and fearing a long, drawn-out war of attrition far from their base, the Japanese hoped that the acute unrest in Russia would compel the government to discuss terms, and their hopes proved justified. Roosevelt served as a mediator at the peace conference, which was held at the Portsmouth Naval Shipyard in Kittery, Marine U.S. Excuse me. Where was I? Main U.S. August 9th, August 9th until September 5th, 1905. In the resulting Treaty of Portsmouth, Japan gained control of the Liaodong Peninsula and Port Arthur, and the South Manchurian Railway, which led to Port Arthur, as well as half of Sakhalin Island. Russia agreed to evacuate southern Manchuria, which was restored to China, and Japan's control of Korea was recognized. Roosevelt was awarded the Nobel Peace Prize for his role in ending the conflict. God damn! So what's been going on, dude? When does the Warhammer 40k canon event come in? And about 40,000 years, how about that? Badumts. Aftermath. The Treaty of Portsmouth effectively ended Russia's expansionist East Asian policy directed towards establishing hegemony over the whole of Asia. Furthermore, the humiliating defeat at the hands of an Asian power that had until so recently been pre-industrial and isolationist added to the national anger and disgust. Within 2 months, the revolution of 1905 compelled Nicholas II to issue the October Manifesto, which ostensibly transformed Russia from an unlimited autocracy into a constitutional monarchy. Russia's defeat also had profound repercussions throughout Asia and Europe. Russia nevertheless remained a nation power, possessing as it did the railways across Siberia and North Manchuria to Vladivostok, and being closely allied with China. Hegemony. Hegemony. Damn. Hello, creature. Hello. Oh, this Teddy Roosevelt? It's about Russia and the Japanese war. Wasn't that the dude who was the American president? Yes, he had, for mediating between Russia and Japan, got the Nobel Peace Prize. Ew, Russia! Japan, for its part, formalized its hold on Korea by forcing Kojong, the final monarch of the Joseon-ji dynasty, to abdicate in 1907. Korean language and culture were violently suppressed, and Japan formally annexed Korea in 1910. Japanese militarists found their domestic political power greatly enhanced, and by the outbreak of World War I, Japan was in a position to treat with its European allies as a fully equal partner. While the Japanese contribution to the war in Europe was negligible, Japanese troops were quick to occupy German colonial possessions in East Asia. World War I left the great powers of Europe shattered, but it reinforced Japan's status as the strongest military and imperialist power in East Asia. Goddamn. Here's a short summary. Heavy with bare fists versus demo man with a katana. You. Rosvensky time. Indeed. Can't I just click on his name? In the Battle of Tsushima, May 27th to 29th, 1905, the Japanese had been unable to secure the complete command. Yes, okay. Unable to secure the complete command of the sea because the Russian naval squadron at Port Arthur and Vladivostok made sorties, and both sides suffered losses in the ensuing engagements. Meanwhile, the Russian government decided to send the Baltic fleet all the way to the Far East under the command of Admiral Zinov Petrovich Rovestensky to link up with the Pacific Squadron at Port Arthur. Apparently not. No, I can't. But what I can do is... do this. And then click some random link that will probably not get me doxxed. Hopefully. Alright. Between 1883 and 1885, often resided in Varna while serving with the Bulgarian Navy. Alright. About media links. Admiral Zinov Petrovich Revendevsky, 1884, 1848 until 1909 stands out as a fascinating figure in the Imperial Russian Navy. He is especially celebrated for his leadership during the Russo-Japanese War, with his remarkable role at the Battle of Tsushima capturing the attention of history enthusiasts everywhere. His naval career was filled with remarkable achievements and intriguing challenges, showcasing the fascinating complexities of Russian naval operations during the late 19th and early 20th century. From 1883 to 1885, Rozhestvensky had the exciting opportunity to serve with the newly formed Bulgarian Navy. In this exciting period, he was instrumental in organizing and training the newly formed naval forces of Bulgaria, which had just achieved autonomy after the Russo-Turkish War of 1877 to 1878. He played a pivotal role in crafting a defense strategy for Bulgarian coastline and was a co-founder of the Technology Association of Bulgaria, showcasing his active participation in military and technological progress of the nation. Although there aren't many specific records about Rozhestvensky time in Varna, it's quite exciting to think that he may have spent some time there between 1883 and 1885 while serving with the Bulgarian Navy. Varna, an incredible port on the Black Sea, must have been a fascinating strategic location for naval operations and training exercises. Yet, without solid archival evidence, the precise details and dates of his time in Varna are still a bit of a mystery. Subsequent journey and impact. Following his time in Bulgaria, Rozhestvensky made his way back to Russia, where he eagerly continued to climb the ranks of the Navy. He took on several exciting command roles, such as serving as a naval attaché in London and leading the Baltic Fleet. One of his most remarkable commands was 2nd Pacific Squadron during the Russo-Japanese War, which reached a dramatic peak at the infamous Battle of Tsushima in 1905. Even though the outcome was not in their favor, Rozhestvensky's incredible journey of navigating the fleet over 18,000 miles to the Far East stands out as an extraordinary testament to naval endurance. Damn, that's a long fucking road! Mile is 1.6, so about 50% more, which is about 27 to 28 kilometers. 26 to 28,000 kilometers. Sorry. Which is a fucking lot! Thank you for the violence, by the way. God damn, yeah, that is a whole lot in endurance. God damn, and ships weren't faster than today, so damn. That was, wow, okay. Yeah, that is an incredible show of endurance. God damn. Holy. What an intriguing chapter in history. Rozhestvensky's journey came to an end in the vibrant city of St. Petersburg, where he left this world in 1909. He was laid to rest at the Alexander Nevsky Lavra, leaving behind a fascinating legacy as a devoted naval officer who championed both Russian and Bulgarian maritime interests during the pivotal time in Eastern European history. God damn. Okay. You know who was the biggest helper of the revolutionaries in Central European region? Pre-World War One? No, but based on what I've seen so far, Japan in World War One had a big role, but I don't know much about it, so I can't say. And this is with him also beating the shit out of incompetent officers himself and yelling at ships that were fucking up hard. God damn. Damn. Exactly. So, they founded revolutionaries in Central Europe. The Japanese? God damn. Wow. That's fucking impressive. Wow, okay. We're learning a lot. He died younger than he would of a heart attack because of that voyage. Oh, man. God damn. Admiral Zinovi Petrovich Rozestvensky. God damn. But I don't want to learn. Well, you're on my stream. You learned what I learned. Hold on.